Picture this. You step outside your front door on a cold December morning, expecting to see the familiar streets of London. The shops are there, the buses are there, the buildings are there. But suddenly, it feels as if the entire city has vanished. You can barely see a few steps ahead. The skyline has disappeared. Streetlights glow faintly through a thick yellow haze. People walk slowly, feeling their way through streets they have known their entire lives. Drivers abandon their vehicles because they can no longer see the road. Even in the middle of the day, it feels like night has fallen over the city. Now, imagine this strange scene lasting not for an hour, not for a day, but for nearly a week. What if one of the greatest cities on Earth suddenly became invisible?
What if millions of people found themselves trapped inside a cloud so dense that normal life almost came to a standstill? This is not a scene from a disaster movie. This is a true story. A story so unbelievable that if it happened today, it would dominate headlines around the world. Welcome to London in December 1952, the week when a city disappeared, the week when London went blind. For centuries, London had been known as a city of fog. Writers described it in novels, artists painted it. Visitors often spoke about the mysterious atmosphere created by mist rolling through the streets. Fog was so common that most Londoners hardly paid attention to it anymore. It was simply part of life. But during the winter of 1952, something arrived that was completely different. At first, nobody realized they were witnessing a historic event. The week began like many others. The weather was cold. People stayed close to fireplaces. Families burned coal to keep their homes warm. Factories burned coal to power production. Power stations burned coal to generate electricity. Across the city, thousands upon thousands of chimneys released smoke into the air. This was normal for London. Coal had powered the city for generations. Few people thought much about the smoke drifting above rooftops. Then, nature introduced a perfect set of conditions. A cold layer of air settled over the city. Above it sat a layer of warmer air. Normally, warm air rises and carries pollution away. This time, the pollution became trapped. Instead of floating upward and dispersing, it remained close to the ground. Hour after hour, more smoke accumulated. Day after day, more particles filled the air. The city was slowly building a giant cloud around itself. Nobody knew it yet, but London was preparing to disappear. On the morning of December 5th, people noticed the fog seemed unusually thick. At first, it was little more than an inconvenience.
The kind of weather people expected during winter. But as the hours passed, visibility continued to worsen. The fog became denser and denser and denser. Soon, people could no longer see across the street. Then they could barely see the end of the sidewalk. By evening, some areas had visibility reduced to only a few feet. Residents stared out their windows and found nothing but a wall of yellow-gray haze. Buildings vanished. Cars vanished. Entire streets vanished. The familiar cityscape dissolved into a mysterious cloud. The transformation was so dramatic that many Londoners struggled to believe what they were seeing. Or rather, what they were no longer seeing. As the smog grew thicker, transportation across the city became increasingly difficult. Drivers slowed to a crawl. Some chose to leave their cars altogether. Buses were delayed. Taxi services became unreliable. Even experienced drivers found themselves unable to navigate roads they traveled every day.
The streets became strangely quiet. The normal rhythm of London began to slow. Pedestrians faced their own challenges. Many people could not see more than a few steps ahead. Some carried flashlights during daylight hours. Others used walls and fences as guides to help them move through the city. Friends walking together could lose sight of one another within moments. The simple act of crossing a street became an adventure. Every journey required patience and caution. Meanwhile, London's famous landmarks disappeared from view. The city that attracted visitors from around the world suddenly had nothing visible to show them. The skyline vanished behind the haze. Monuments disappeared. Bridges faded into darkness. It was as though someone had erased London from existence. Yet beneath the cloud, millions of people continued trying to live their lives. The smog did not remain outside. It found its way indoors as well. Homes became hazy. Offices became hazy. Restaurants became hazy. Even large indoor spaces struggled to escape its reach. The atmosphere inside many buildings looked almost as foggy as the streets outside. Movie theaters faced unusual problems. Audience members sometimes found it difficult to clearly see the screen through the smoky air. Events were postponed. Activities were canceled. Businesses experienced disruptions. The city felt trapped. Life continued, but only barely. Many residents assumed the fog would disappear within a day or two. London had experienced fog before. Surely this would pass. But the days kept going, and the smog remained. Each morning brought the same thick blanket covering the city. Each evening ended with the same eerie darkness. People began to realize this was not ordinary weather. Something extraordinary was happening. Scientists later studied the event and discovered how several factors had combined to create the perfect conditions. Heavy coal use released enormous amounts of smoke into the atmosphere. The temperature inversion trapped pollutants close to the ground. Calm winds prevented the air from clearing. Together, these factors created one of the most famous air pollution events in modern history. The city had effectively become trapped beneath a giant invisible lid. Everything remained stuck in place. The smoke, the particles, the haze. Nothing could escape. The result was a cloud unlike anything most people had ever experienced. For 5 days, London existed inside this strange world. A world where daylight struggled to shine through. A world where familiar streets became unfamiliar. A world where visibility disappeared. Then, finally, nature changed course. A stronger wind arrived. The trapped air began to move. Slowly, the smog started to break apart. The thick cloud that had held London captive for nearly a week began to drift away. Buildings emerged from the haze. Roads became visible again. Landmarks reappeared. The city slowly returned to view. For many residents, seeing the skyline again felt almost surreal. After days of living inside a cloud, the return of clear air seemed extraordinary. Yet the story did not end when the smog disappeared. The event left a lasting impact on London and the rest of the world. People began asking important questions. How had this happened? Could it happen again? What role did pollution play? What changes were needed to prevent similar events in the future? Researchers studied the incident extensively. Government officials examined the causes. Environmental awareness grew stronger. The Great Smog became a turning point. It showed that air quality was not merely an environmental issue. It was something that affected every aspect of daily life. Transportation, business, health, education, communities. Everything was connected. The lessons learned from London
helped inspire cleaner air policies and environmental reforms in many places around the world. Today, more than 70 years later, the Great Smog remains one of history's most remarkable urban events. Not because of towering waves, not because of earthquakes, not because of storms, but because an entire city simply vanished from sight. For 5 unforgettable days, millions of people lived inside a cloud so thick that normal life became almost impossible. The streets were still there. The buildings were still there. The people were still there. Yet London itself seemed to disappear. And in that extraordinary moment, the world learned a lesson that would shape the future of environmental protection for generations to come. The Great Smog of 1952 was more than a weather event. It was a warning, a turning point, and one of the most astonishing true stories ever witnessed by a modern city. A week when London lost sight of itself and helped the world see more clearly than ever before. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories that shaped our world. Every week, we uncover the mysteries, forgotten events, and unbelievable moments from history that many people have never heard about. And if this story surprised you, let us know in the comments. Could you imagine living through a week where an entire city disappeared behind a wall of smog? Your thoughts and discussions help keep these remarkable stories alive. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next journey into the most extraordinary events ever recorded. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep exploring the stories that changed history forever.